Hi, I'm Jim Porter, and I'm author of the book Stop Stress This Minute. Over the course of the next 20 minutes, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the book, and I'm also going to try to convince you why I think it's so important for you to learn how to manage stress. Your health, your happiness, your productivity, even to some extent your wealth is dependent on how well you manage stress. And yet, so many people put this last on their list of priorities. I'm going to try to convince you why I think it should be first. Over the course of this short program, you are going to learn how to monitor and manage your stress on the fly while it's happening. You don't have to wait till the end of the day to take a hot bath to manage your stress with this program. You're going to learn how to manage your stress in minutes instead of hours. And furthermore, we're going to teach you some time management techniques that will help you carve out 2 hours for yourself every day. We're going to teach you how to make stress management a part of your daily routine, no different than brushing your teeth or taking a shower. And then finally, I'm going to talk about why I think valuing stress management above all else is so important. When we talk about stress, the first thing we need to talk about are the signs and symptoms of stress. Physical symptoms of stress include a pounding heart, an upset stomach, rapid pulse, cold hands, dry mouth, unexpected perspiration, skin rashes, diarrhea, sleeplessness, recurrent colds, headaches, fatigue, and muscle tension. Now, if you're like most people, you will try to soldier on and ignore your symptoms of stress. Or maybe you'll take a pill and pretend like you don't have any stress. Well, let me just say that when you take a pill, you're just dampening down the symptoms of stress. And if you do this long enough, you're going to end up with a stress-related disease. Notice the way the word dis-ease is hyphenated here. It's there to remind you that disease is a synonym for the word stress. And what you see below that heading is heart disease, high blood pressure, asthma, rashes, hives, depression, anxiety, colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, thyroid problems, rheumatoid arthritis, MS, infertility, ulcers, tension headaches, migraine headaches, backaches, chronic pain, Epstein-Barr, fibromyalgia, and insomnia. These are all conditions with a stress component to them, which means that stress can contribute to these conditions, but it doesn't necessarily cause them all by itself. But we know, for example, in heart disease, that stress is one of the top 3 risk factors for heart disease. So you definitely want to pay attention, especially if you're experiencing any of the signs and symptoms that we talked about in the last slide. You don't want to end up with your name on this list. Because look, stress is implicated in 7 out of the 10 leading causes of death. We already mentioned heart disease. There's stroke, suicide, homicide, and it's indirectly linked to cancer, liver disease, and emphysema. So in order to keep yourself from winding up with a stress-related health condition, you need to monitor and track your stress throughout your day. And I've developed a stress number system that I write about in chapter 1 of my book that will help you do that. And it's a simple system based on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being a total absence of stress or tension, and 10 being a near panic attack. So what I want you to do is take your stress number right now. This is totally subjective. Just make a guess as to what you think it might be. Most people are going to fall between a 2 and a 6 or a 7. And what I want you to notice is that when you do this, maybe every hour or so, you just check in with your body and try to determine where you are. And what happens is stress is cumulative. So let's say you get stuck in traffic and stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline will be dumped into your bloodstream. And it takes sometimes up to 2 hours for those stress hormones to come back to baseline. So what happens is stress can build on previous events. So first you get stuck in traffic, then you're late for work, then your boss criticizes you for being late for work, and one stressor can build on top of another until before you know it, you're up to a 5 or a 6 or a 7, and you blow your top over something that normally wouldn't upset you at all. So that's why that happens. And that's why you need to monitor your stress throughout the day. And when it gets up to a 5 or a 6 or a 7, you definitely need to hit the reset button by doing what we're going to talk about in the next slide. Now I'm going to teach you how to self-regulate your nervous system. Up until about 50 years ago, Western scientists would have told you it's impossible to self-regulate your nervous system. That's why it's called the autonomic nervous system, because it runs on autopilot. But now we know that you can lower your stress, lower your breathing rate, lower your heart rate using some of the practices that I talk about in Chapter 2. These are simple techniques that you can do in a minute or two to really bring that stress number down when it gets up over a 5 or a 6. So let's try deep breathing to show you exactly what I mean. It's very simple to learn how to do deep breathing or abdominal breathing. We're trying to bring air right down to the lower lobes of the lungs, and we can do that by placing one hand over your belly button. And when you breathe in deeply, you'll notice your hand rise on the in-breath and fall on the out-breath. So why don't you try that right now? Breathing in deeply, noticing the hand rise, and breathing out, noticing the hand fall. Breathing in, noticing the hand rise, and breathing out, noticing the hand fall. There's 3 other relaxation techniques we talk about here. Progressive muscle relaxation, where you tense and relax certain muscle groups throughout the body, point by point. So you'd start at the top of the head and sort of tense the muscles in the scalp, maybe the muscles in the eyes, the muscles in the jaw, all at once, and then let it relax. Then you'd move down to your neck and shoulders, and you'd maybe scrunch your shoulders or bring your shoulders up to your ears, tense all those muscles for, say, a count of 5, and then let them relax. And then you move down through the body, through the back, through the hips, through the legs, through the knees, the lower legs, and then the feet, and until you've relaxed the whole body. Body scan works similarly to progressive muscle relaxation, where you go point by point, except you're not tensing the muscles first. You're just noticing any tension there and letting it relax. And then finally, with mindfulness meditation, all you're doing is noticing your own breathing, noticing every in-breath, noticing every out-breath, and then noticing the gap between the out-breath and the next in-breath. You can do it for a couple of minutes, and you'll notice that your mind will start to wander. And the practice of mindfulness meditation is always bringing yourself back to the point of focus. You could even just sit there and notice the sounds coming in your ears from the outside of the building or within the room. That would be a mindfulness meditation also. And you can do that for a couple of minutes. And there are 6 more similar relaxation techniques that you can learn about in Chapter 2 of Stop Stress This Minute. So the next technique we're going to talk about is cognitive restructuring. And this is one of my favorite techniques because it allows you to manage your stress on the fly while your stress is happening and nobody knows you're doing it. It's really all about your thinking. This is the work of Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck, and they turned the world of psychology upside down when they started focusing on people's sort of negative self-talk. And we've got this kind of voice in our head that's running a play-by-play commentary on every single thing we do. Like when we say to ourselves, this traffic jam is never going to clear up, or I'm never going to get this job done, or I've got the world's worst boss. And we're constantly exaggerating the severity of a negative event. And as a result of doing this, we experience more stress than we would normally if we just saw the reality as it was. And in order to sort of help us understand the sequence of stress, Dr. Albert Ellis came up with this great equation, A plus B equals C. The activating event plus your beliefs about that event equals the consequence. And An A could be anything that stresses you out. It might be a traffic jam. It might be a lost set of car keys. It might be an angry remark, an argument that you got in with your spouse. Those are all A's. C's are what you feel inside as the result of your A's. So maybe you feel upset, frustrated, sad, depressed, anxious, or something like that, or just tense. Those are all C's. Now, most people, the whole world, in fact, believes that A equals C. But what Ellis and Beck pointed out was that there's usually a thought that occurs between A and C that makes your stress even worse. And when you change that thought around, you can really make your stress a lot less. So, for example, when your boss comes in and he's kind of in a mood, if you just say, he's in a mood today and tomorrow he'll be better, it's going to be a lot less stress than if you say to yourself, I've got the world's worst boss. He's always doing this to me. I can't believe that guy. So we tend to exaggerate that negativity. And the trick to it is to notice it first, notice your negative self-talk, and then to counteract it, to talk back to it, or to use the language of Albert Ellis, to dispute it. So that's really all there is to cognitive restructuring, but I devote 2 chapters to it in my book. So if you want to learn more about this great technique, and it's always considered one of the best techniques to use at work, check out chapters 3 and 4. In chapters 7 and 8, I talk about problem solving, and I think that's one of the most underrated methods for managing stress, because the great thing about problem solving is usually you eliminate your stress. You're not really trying to manage it here, you're actually getting rid of it. And Dr. Mort Orman wrote a book called The 14-Day Stress Cure, and he talks about stress as being kind of a vague term that doesn't lead to any solutions, because, when you say something like, my job is stressful, well, what does that mean? Well, how can we solve that problem? We can't. But when we narrow it down and we sort of think of it as specific problems, those are things we can deal with. Those are things we can solve. I like to, my alternate definition for stress is a problem you believe you can't solve. And for the entire time you believe you can't solve it, it's going to keep being stressful. But when you shift your focus forward to thinking about what the solution might be, your stress will start to dissipate. And one easy way to do this is when you're sort of confronted with a stressful problem, just say to yourself, how can I solve this problem? How can I solve this problem? And you'll notice you'll start to relax a little bit. Your creative problem solving ability will come back online. And generally, a creative solution will pop into your head. And this is what I write about in chapters 7 and 8. One of the biggest sources of stress is time pressure. And people are always saying, I'm under so much time pressure already. Where am I going to find the time to manage my stress? Well, we've shown you techniques that you can do in 2 minutes or less. And we've also shown you techniques like cognitive restructuring that you can do on the fly while your stress is happening. But where are you going to find the time to do something like yoga or exercise? Or if you wanted to meditate for half an hour, where would you find the time to do that? Well, in the next slide, we're going to show you exactly how to do that. Because what's happened is we're all kind of hypnotized by all the urgent things we have to do. And as it turns out, important things are seldom urgent, and urgent things are seldom important, as you will soon see in the next slide. So this is the time management matrix, where we talk about urgent things and important things, and we're basically dividing up all the tasks that you might do in a day into these 4 quadrants. And what you're going to see when you look at this time management matrix is that most of us spend most of our time in quadrant 1, what I call the stress quadrant. This is where we're dealing with things that are both urgent and important. most of the crises that we have to deal with, the deadline-driven projects, the medical emergencies we have to deal with. And of course, we're always putting out fires and dealing with last-minute preparations. This is quadrant one, and there's a lot of stress associated with doing things that are both urgent and important. Then we move over to quadrant two, where things are important, but because they're not urgent, basically, nobody ever does the things in quadrant two. This is where we educate ourselves, maybe read a self-help book. This is where we practice stress management. This is where we do relationship building, calling up an old friend, or even finding a mentor to help you with a particular work issue. This is where we get exercise. This is where we plan our day. And these are all important things to do, but they're not urgent. Now we move over to quadrant three. This is called the quadrant of deception because a lot of the interruptions that we get, we believe are important, but actually they're just urgent. When somebody stops by our desk and wants to ask us a favor or needs some information from us, it's maybe important to them, but it's not necessarily important to you. Or maybe you're having lunch with your best friend and the cell phone rings. And here's an example of something where you're doing something that's important but not urgent, and then you get that call and it feels like it might be urgent. Of course, it is urgent because the phone is ringing, but you think it might be important. You answer it, and it turns out not to be. And it's just another interruption with this attempt to do something with your friend. So now we move over to quadrant four, where we do things that are neither urgent nor important. And a lot of times when we spend our days in quadrant one, we jump over into quadrant four, where we're surfing the internet, opening junk emails, and watching TV. The average American, of course, watches 5 to 6 hours of TV a day. And so there's a lot of time that we spend here in quadrant four. And there's a very simple way, and you're probably already guessing what that way is, of finding 2, 3, even 4 hours of time for yourself. And it's by taking it from quadrant four and applying it to quadrant two. And let me tell you how I did this. When my kids were little, I would read to them before they went to bed, usually around 8:30. And I noticed that I was really tired. But typically, I would put them to bed, go downstairs, and watch TV for 3 hours until I got tired again. And then I started thinking, well, why don't I just not watch TV, go to bed at 9 o'clock, and get up 8 hours later or 7 hours later, and now I have 2 hours to myself without anybody interrupting me to do these important but not urgent things from quadrant two. And let me tell you something. That's how I wrote my book. That's how I started my business. That's how I've been able to manage my stress. It's an amazing thing to do this, and I urge you to give it a try. So in chapter 9, we talk about making stress management a part of your daily routine. Because once you do that, and now you know how to do that by taking time from quadrant four and putting it into quadrant two, you're going to be able to hit the reset button every day. Starting your day at a 0 or a 1 is so satisfying. It's so pleasurable that once you do this for a couple of weeks or a month or two, you're never going to want to go back to your old sort of stressful ways again. Trust me on this when I tell you this. When I go to the gym, which I do every morning in that quadrant two time that I have to myself now, I don't, it doesn't require any willpower on my part at all, because I don't ever want to feel like I did before I started doing this. And an easy way to understand this is, imagine how you'd feel if you skipped your shower every day, or just for a couple of days, or how you'd feel if you skipped brushing your teeth for even one time. You just wouldn't feel right. You wouldn't want to do it. It doesn't require any willpower to do those things because you don't feel right when you don't do them. And that's exactly how I feel when I don't dedicate this time every morning to managing my stress. So give it a try and see how it works for you. So whenever I do a stress management training session, I always end with this slide. I always ask the audience to ask yourself the following question. How would your life be different, or how would my life be different if I valued stress management or peace of mind above all else? And it's an interesting question because most people value their health, or they value their wealth, or they value their religion or their religious beliefs, their integrity, and certainly a lot of people put family above all else. But what if you put stress management on top? Now, it seems counterintuitive at first to do this, but think about it for a minute. Don't you think you'd be a better parent if you were able to come at every day feeling relaxed and at ease and with a certain amount of serenity? Don't you think your religious beliefs would be even stronger if you were able to do that? Don't you think you'd be a better worker if you were able to do that every day? I think when you look at it in this way and really analyze it, it really takes this counterintuitive idea and turns it upside down. And you realize managing stress is way more important than you ever thought before. So think about this and ask yourself this question and see what answer you come up with. Now you know why it's so important to manage stress, and you have a lot of techniques at your disposal to start doing this. My advice is to start small. Start using the cognitive restructuring material that we talk about in chapters 3 and 4. And just start there. If that appeals to you, that's where you should begin. Don't try to read the whole book. Just start right there. If problem solving is what appealed to you, start there. If learning a couple of little 2-minute techniques is what appeals to you, start there. Do something for 5 or 10 minutes every day until you develop these things into a habit. And I guarantee you what you're going to find is that attitudes follow your behavior. You make the choice to behave a certain way, to do a certain thing, and then you're going to see the reward of doing that day in and day out. I didn't want to go to the gym when I first started going there, but after a while, I saw the reward, that I felt great every day when I did that. And so now there's nothing that can stop me from going to the gym every morning. And that's how attitudes follow your behavioral choices. So we've put together a package of resources on our website, which we're calling the Teacher Bundle. And it's all of our best-selling resources to just help you jumpstart your stress management campaign. We've put in 25 biodots. You wear them on the back of your hand, and they'll tell you whether you're stressed or relaxed throughout your day. So you can see if some of your relaxation techniques are working. We put in a day away from stress. Just pop it into the CD player, and I guarantee you'll feel relaxed within about 5 minutes. It's our all-time best-selling CD. We put in our all-time best-selling stress assessment, the Stress Profiler. It'll tell you how you're doing in 10 different areas of your life. See how stressed you are in areas like time pressure, worry, anger, and stress symptoms. So you want to know how you're doing in those areas. And if you score high in any area, then you can find out more about what to do about those areas as well. And we've thrown in the student version of this in case you want to use these resources in your classroom. So normally all these products would go for about $35, and we're putting it into one package for just $9.95 plus shipping and handling. So check it out. Just go to the landing page on the homepage of our website, StressStop.com. So thanks again for joining us. It's been a real pleasure talking to you about stress. Here's my contact information. If you have any more questions, I'd love to hear from you. You've got my email. You can contact me at this phone number. We love to hear from our customers and people who we've helped in whatever small way to learn how to manage stress. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for being a part of this program.